It's really a pleasure to be here and this very exciting autumn as a fellow in this. So we have some questions for you, State Minister Roth and Secretary of State Antunes. First of all, we're going to ask about this vision for public sphere, because throughout these couple of months, we have been discussing it and we have already presented to the audience our visions, but we wanted to know what are your visions for a stronger shared European public sphere? Just a really simple question to launch the discussion. Who wants to start? Perhaps we start from the current presidency in Germany.
First of all, thank you so much for having me, Milena, Emilia, Stefan, and I'm really honored that Tiago from Portugal is joining us. That's a real pleasure. I can imagine how challenging it is in these times, and that's why my time is a bit limited. In around 25 minutes, I have to inform my parliament about the compromise with the Hungarians and with the Polish.
Yes, we wanted to ask about that.
It was a really tough week. But thank you very much for the question. My vision of a strong European public sphere is one in which people get together to discuss European topics as European citizens. All challenges that we are facing today don't stop at our country borders. Climate, security, the pandemic. People often tend to overestimate the importance of nationality. For example, if you live in a big city like Berlin, you may have much more in common with people from big cities in other countries than with people from rural Germany. There is already a post-national sphere within Europe, which we must seize to foster European integration. Another obvious but important point for me is we won't be able to tackle global issues effectively just as nation states. We need a European approach rather than just national approaches. We need more Europe instead of less. We need a more engaged European civil society rather than civil societies that are just engaged on the national level. This is why I'm so happy about your initiative that connect civil society in Europe, like we are seeing today with Daring New Spaces. A strong Europe, for me, needs a strong political backing as much as it needs support from civil society. And I'm glad that we have the opportunity to bring these two sides together. Not just today, but that was one of our main objectives in our council presidency.
Thank you.
Well, hello. Thank you. First of all, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. Hello, Stefan, Emilia, Michael. And congratulations for this very interesting project and the work that you've been doing, all the fellows over the last few years or few months rather, striving to find new ways to get to their new spaces of public dialogue and a new European sphere in which we can engage in all the global issues that Michael has just mentioned, which cannot be answered solely at the national level. And so indeed, we need to find at the European level more and more fora where we can meet, we can discuss, and where we can have also, I think at the present moment, it is very important, well-informed debates based on sound and reliable information based on evidence. And I would, when I got your invitation, I remembered immediately what came to my mind was something that we have done here in Portugal, but I think we can do it as well at the European level over the last few months regarding the pandemic, which is we have in fact created a new public space, a new public sphere, a forum in which we get together both the experts, the scientists that have been giving advice to the government on the pandemic, so the academia, people who have been studying viruses and epidemics for many, many years, and in the same room, the major political parties and the major political bodies in Portugal. So the President of the Republic, the President of the Parliament, the Prime Minister, members of all major parties, members of the social partners, and lately this has been also televised. So the entire society has been able to witness a dialogue based on the evidence, which is essential if we want to have a sound, fair, healthy debate, which is not based on disinformation, fake news, populist views, the views of deniers that keep spreading all that over the social media. We need to have a well-informed, evidence-based debate. And so we need to have this forum where we can, in the same room, have all the politicians, all the policymakers getting exactly the same information, getting sound, reliable information on which all of us can base our decisions. We have made tough decisions over the last few months. And in order to have sound decisions and for them to be accepted by the public, it is key that they are based on evidence, based on a dialogue in which policymakers can ask directly, can interact directly with the experts and ask questions and clarify issues, so that we can, none of us knew, well, we still don't know much about this virus, but we knew nothing, almost nothing at first. And so this forum, this new public space has been key, at least in Portugal. I think we could have some of that at the European level as well.
That'd be excellent. Now, this sounds almost like from my own Academy of Finland project, where we are looking at the interaction between politicians, academics, and also others. But Stefan, you had the next question about the Council presidencies.
Thank you, Minister of State Roth and State Secretary Antunes for these first responses. The next question we want to ask relates to the Council presidency, and we wanted to ask what have been the key initiatives that Germany has put forward with regard to the European public sphere, and from a Portuguese perspective, how will continuity be ensured?
I think that here we had already the answer of Tiago in this kind of coming together, and I look forward to hearing more, but let's just have this for the State Minister. Now, we can't hear you.
Okay, so thank you so much, Stefan. You already know our program was very ambitious since we live in difficult times. We need to deal with the biggest pandemic and its health and social and economic consequences, and we need ambitious goals for climate, for our future, and also for the protection of rule of law. I would like to emphasize our cultural program which was extremely inclusive, and we invited also children to play a crucial role in this dialogue, which was not focused on national activists. It was a European-wide dialogue focused on the young generation. But one of our main objectives was to start the conference on Europe's future, which is also a very inclusive offer to citizens. Not just the usual suspects should be involved, also people which are a bit more reserved, which are a bit more concerned about the European integration process, which are worried about globalization. We should invite them. So it should be a decentralized, inclusive, and representative offer to many, many citizens across the European Union. But unfortunately, and my colleague Heiko Maas already talked with you about the problems, but unfortunately, we couldn't agree on the chair person so far, and that's why we couldn't organize the kickoff in our presidency. But we remain committed. The project is very close to my heart, and it's a unique opportunity for all of us. And I hope we can also support our Portuguese friends to start this process after we solved all the remaining issues. I'm a bit disappointed because we were extremely engaged and we tried to start, but without a chair and without an interinstitutional agreement between the Council, the Commission, and the European Parliament, it wouldn't work. That was one of the major problems. So I'm a bit disappointed, but I'm sure our friends in Portugal will continue in the same ambitious way.
Yeah, well, I think this is exactly...
Well, sure, we will follow on the path of the German presidency. We have been always lucky to be the presidency that follows the German presidency. So in the past, we have taken advantage of the many things that the presidency has managed to deal with. And I remember specifically the Lisbon Treaty, which was obviously signed in Lisbon, but based on a very important work from the German presidency at the time. And so now, obviously, we hope that all the outstanding issues of the current presidency will be solved in the next few weeks. And we hope that we then will be more free to not have to deal with these major pressing, urgent problems and be able to focus on the future of Europe. Indeed, to be able to focus on the climate, on the twin transitions, the climate and the digital transition. And one other thing that we want to focus and stress deeply in our presidency has to do with the European Pillar of Social Rights. We will hold a summit in May in the city of Porto on this topic, and we want to follow on the progress of Gothenburg. And we now have a declaration, a set of principles, but we need more than that. We need implementation of this social pillar of social rights. We are not only in the midst of a health crisis, but also a social crisis. And therefore, we need a strong social response. Europe must respond. And it must, I would add, it must respond differently from what it has done regarding the previous crisis. And this is very important because, especially for youngsters, because many young people have endured in the span of a few years' time, they have had to endure 2 consecutive crises. And we need to give answers to these people and not leave anyone behind, so that we don't have disenfranchised people then going to the extremes. This is obviously one of the topics here today, what we want to avoid. And the way we are able to answer to the crisis with the funds that are with the Next Generation EU that we hope gets settled these days in Brussels and for good. And but not only that, with the social agenda, with a very important social agenda, that is key to get these people on board, to regain trust from these mostly young people, and for them to know that Europe has a solution and for their problems and is working to get them on board and not let them, just go after all these populist and extremist views.
That sounds really excellent. But the populists and extremists, they still are there. And I come from Finland, and as we were passing the presidency a year ago, we stressed the point of the rule of law. And now the Finns party, which is as popular as the Social Democratic Party of Sanna Marin now in Finland, has been siding openly with the Polish and Hungarian governments. It seems to me that the public sphere might polarize between those who are supportive of the rule of law and understand what it means, and those who don't really care about it and are a bit suspicious of the EU. So how is the current compromises a solution to this problem? And how do you evaluate that now, Mr. Roth?
Just Michael, Emilia, that's
Yes,
very simple. It's just a title, but thank you so much, and my appreciation to our friends in Portugal for the agenda with respect to strengthening the social dimension of the European Union. It was also one of our key priorities of the German Council Presidency. I just want to highlight one of our initiatives to establish a European framework for minimum wages. That was one of our initiatives. Sure, the implementation of SURE was also extremely key, and I'm very happy that our colleagues in Lisbon will continue. That's really great, and that's extremely important. And that brings me back to the rule of law. Let me be very clear, Emilia. The European Union is first and foremost a union of common values. We are much more than a single market or a currency union. And these values signed by 27 member states. And it's an obligation, it's a commitment for all of us. We cannot offer political discounts. But we just have one instrument embedded in the European treaties, that is the Article 7 procedure. And very frankly speaking, nobody is really happy with the Article 7 procedures. We continued in the German Council Presidency, and it's extremely important to continue. But on the other hand, we established 2 new tools to strengthen and to protect the rule of law, because the rule of law is the basis for everything, for all our values, like democracy, media pluralism, media freedom, freedom of speech, independence of judiciary, fight against corruption, respect to ethnic, religious, sexual, cultural minorities. So, and the first tool we established, very successful in a close cooperation within the trio presidency with our Portuguese colleagues and also with Slovenians, is the so-called rule of law check, the rule of law dialogue. It's completely new. It's a more periodic peer review. It means that all member states will be evaluated with respect to the situation of rule of law in the member states, based on a very ambitious, very profound rule of law report by the European Commission. And what we really need, and that is our main objective, is a mutual understanding of rule of law. Today, rule of law divides us. But what we really need is a mutual understanding of rule of law, what unites us. And that is one of our main objectives. It's painful, nobody likes it, but at the end, it's worth it, and it's extremely important. And that was key for us in the German Council Presidency, and I'm glad to say that our colleagues in Portugal and also in Slovenia will continue, so we can establish a new instrument in order to establish a mutual understanding of rule of law. And that brings me to the second instrument. And this is, it still is extremely controversial. This is the so-called rule of law mechanism with a strong link to the EU budget. That means financial sanctions if a country, a member state, violates the guiding principles of rule of law. And the mechanism we agreed on in a very long and intense negotiations within the Council, but also with the European Parliament, is an efficient new instrument. But we had to take into account that the Hungarian and also the Polish government was not happy with that. They blocked the whole negotiations with respect to the financial package with an amount of 1.8 billion euros to support the regions, the economic sectors, and the people which are most affected by the pandemic. That's a question of solidarity, and solidarity is very, very important for us, but also for the European Union. So after very long and controversial negotiations with the Polish and with the Hungarian government, now we have a proposal, but our message to Warsaw and to Budapest was crystal clear. We won't reopen the negotiations regarding the rule of law mechanism. And we need a swift solution because the countries can't wait for a clear signal that the European Union is willing and able to support and to assist people, because the pandemic is a real threat for millions of people. And so we need a clear signal that we stand united, but we cannot start a competition between the money and the rule of law. And so we had a very strong stance on the rule of law, and I'm really optimistic that today the heads of states and government will consent with respect to the new compromise, because it's the same text. No, we didn't change a single word, but we have an interpretation. From my point of view, it sounds a bit strange and something, it's not really positive, and I'm not really happy with that, but that was the bridge. All member states can enter. The like-mindeds with a strong commitment to rule of law, but also the two governments of Hungary and Poland. And I hope the heads of states and government will send a clear signal that the willingness and the ability to form a compromise still exists in the European Union.
Well, I hope so too. And well, my talk here is easy because
Tiago, I'm really sorry. Could we ask the last question for both of you? That would be coming from Stefan.
It's building on this, and would be great to maybe add one more component to it. First, indeed, this rule of law issue is great that we have an agreement at the moment, but it's definitely going to stay with us in the future, because the challenge is deeper than just this disagreement. So a key question here is, what should the EU institutions and EU representations in the EU member states do to support member states to basically cater for a stronger civic education for their citizens, so that they understand the rights they have and the democratic values that they should actually defend. Can the EU institutions also pay attention to and support member states to deal with the challenge of political parties that transform in more authoritarian leaning and sometimes even state capture mechanisms? And the last bit that we would love to have your input on is the one of how EU could be brought together more substantively. After 30 years of reunification, there are still significant divides between the newer and older member states, and also other kinds of divides. So can EU become more inclusive? And what is the Portuguese presidency maybe hoping to achieve in this direction? Thank you.
Just may I ask, because my team informed me that there are some technical problems. You have problems to understand or to see me?
I don't think we have.
Because I was a bit surprised because we had a really good connection.
We can all see and hear you perfectly.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you so much. And now I have the privilege to listen to Tiago.
And I will just, as a moderator, quickly remind that this session goes on until 5. So it would be good to have very short to the point answers to this last question. Thank you.
Okay, I know that we're running out of time. My task here is very easy because I agree with everything Michael has said. So the EU is not solely an economic endeavor. It's not solely a commercial venture. It's not solely a monetary union. It's much more than that. It's above all, and in first place, it's a community of shared values and principles. And so the rule of law is essential, and we have to be very determined in protecting the rule of law throughout Europe. This has to be a precondition to everything else, but we also cannot obviously have the EU budget made hostage to discussions on this issue. So we have to be very determined. And I want to compliment Michael and the German presidency for all the work it has done on this topic, and I hope with success today. And we'll move on from that, always protecting the rule of law and making sure that we deliver. This is not just talk, that we have to actually make sure that throughout Europe, East and West, North and South, the human rights and fundamental values in which the EU is based are fully respected.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister of State Roth and State Secretary Antunes. Thank you so much for your input and responses.